The Prime Minister is today hosting a summit for 40 countries to step up the fight against what he calls the vile trade of people smuggling.
So Keir Starmer is going to urge those attempting to work together to stop smuggling gangs in the same way they combat terrorists. Border Security Minister Dame Angela Eagle joins us from Westminster. Very good morning to you. Well, we've got a record number of people crossing the channel. We heard you say when you came to power you're going to smash the gangs. We're 9 months in, but we're still housing asylum seekers at the cost to taxpayers of more than £8 million a day. How can you actually get action on this today? What's the plan? Well,
this is a global trade, and it crosses many jurisdictions and borders, and so we have to cooperate much more, both operationally and politically and diplomatically, to deal with these transnational issues. And that is what today's summit, which has got 40 countries at it, as you've just rightly said, is aiming to do. We've got debates today amongst the interior ministers of countries, and then tomorrow is an operational day where border security colleagues will be talking about much more practical things. OK,
so for instance, the top 10 countries of origin for asylum claimants last year was at the top Pakistan, 10,000 claiming asylum. How many of those would have come on small boats, do you think?
Not very many come across on small boats. Each country is different, but with Pakistan it's often visa overstayers who claim asylum.
And what are you doing on that?
Well, we're looking, each country is different, but if we think that the visa systems are being abused, then we have to tighten them up, and we do that and have discussions with countries. Pakistan is represented, I think, today, and so diplomatically we keep all options under review if we think that there is abuse going on.
So which country are people predominantly coming from who then get into the boats and get organised by these gangs you're trying to smash?
Well, it varies from year to year. So, for example, in the first half of last year, it was Vietnamese.
OK, so what are you telling Vietnam? Because presumably today you're going to say to these countries, don't let your people leave and get in these boats. So what are you going to do with Vietnam? It's, it's a very popular tourist destination.
We've worked very closely with the Vietnamese authorities, and we've got some of these numbers down. We're working with them on good returns agreements, so we send people back. But also, there's an issue there about the advertisements. So we've just launched an advertising blitz on Zalo, which is a Vietnamese platform, to try to get to the people who are being sold lies about what awaits them if they come to the UK. We also often find that Vietnamese people are essentially smuggled over in debt bondage and find themselves put to work in sex work, nail bars, growing cannabis in the hands of vicious, violent gangs. And so there's a policing issue there, there's a protection issue there, and there's also a returns issue.
I mean, there is an issue, isn't there, about, of course, tackling the gangs. But if people get here, at the moment, in tens of thousands, they're put up in hotels and we pay for them. And I just wonder, don't you need more deterrence? Doesn't it need to be tougher for people if they come here and then fail to get their asylum?
I mean, I think the ultimate issue is that we've got to make the system faster from end to end, fair, but much faster, and then we've got to return the people who fail. Now, this government has returned 19,000 people in its first 9 months in office. That is actually more than was returned in any year of the last Parliament. So we're ramping up returns. We're also ramping up visits to crack down on illegal working, arresting people there and fining employers who are employing workers illegally, often in sweatshop-style conditions. There's a £60,000 fine for every illegal worker, and we're making some announcements today about extending those right-to-work checks. So we are trying to crack down on that. I
guess the question in my mind is, you've got China there and America at the conference. I don't know what the Chinese do, but in America, ICE, the Immigration Customs Enforcement Agency, they're very tough. The conditions they keep people in are very harsh. I just wonder whether are we just too soft? Do we need to toughen up the way in which we keep people if they fail their asylum claims, rather than paying for them to be in hotels?
Well, they're not paid to be in hotels if they fail their asylum claims. I think it's important
that... tens of thousands, because you can't get rid of them. I mean, there are all these people who have not had their asylum claim not only processed, but even if they are, if you can't send them back to another country, we pay for them in quite, comfortable conditions to live for years.
No, we try to return every single person. I think that
but you don't.
Each jurisdiction has to do what it thinks is necessary in its own particular country. But I think the things we have in common and what the summit is going to be talking about today is the gangs, who they are, how we can deal with them, how we can introduce things like counter-terrorist powers in the border security bill currently before Parliament to make sure that we can disrupt them much earlier. The announcements today about international crime prosecution monies so that we can ensure that the prosecutorial authorities in other jurisdictions have the information that we gather that they can use as evidence in an appropriate way, so we can start arresting people. That's the important thing.
All right. Dame Angela Reid, just a quick one before we let you go. I imagine that you're being contacted by constituents who are worried about their PIP payments. What are you saying to them when they say, I have no idea how my payment is going to be cut or even withdrawn?
Well, the first thing to say about this is obviously people are very worried because of some of the coverage of this, and it's important to emphasise that each case will be looked on its merits, and those that really can't work won't be required to work and will actually get increased payments. But I think we're the only country in the G7 whose employment of people of working age levels haven't returned to pre-pandemic levels, and we've got to look at why that is and see what we can do to assist people to get back into work. You're far more likely to get out of poverty if you do get back into work, and so it's important to get the balance right, and I know that my own constituents, some of whom are feeling very, very worried about this, and we need to give them reassurance that their case will be looked at on its merits.
But in your constituency, there's going to be more than 500 people, if you're an average constituency, who will lose their personal independence payments, £4,000 a year. There'll be about 250 people in your constituency who will also lose carers allowance. That ends up for a couple £8,000 a year. Do all of those 500 people in your constituency, are they all at the moment not working and they should be?
Well, I mean, we know that personal independence payments aren't an out-of-work benefit, so it's impossible to generalise about those people, which is why it's important to say that each case will be looked upon on its merits, and there's a £1 billion fund to help people get back into work if they've got the capacity to do so, and increase payments for those who don't.
OK.